Hello and welcome to NL's online guitar lesson series. Over the course of the next 6 weeks, we're going to learn lots of awesome stuff from the very beginning of the guitar. So you're going to learn how to hold the instrument, you're going to learn how to play the instrument, and you're going to learn, hopefully, how to think about the guitar moving forward. Before we get started playing the guitar, it's really important to get warmed up. We want to make sure that we have lots of blood moving through our shoulders, our arms, our hands, and our fingers especially. That will help to keep us nice and loose, it will help to make it easier to play, and it will help to prevent injury. So there's lots of movements we can do to make that happen, and here's a few of them now. We can start off just by shaking our arms. We can shake one arm at a time, or we can shake both arms. Feels a little bit silly just to do it on your own, but it doesn't really matter. Just to get your arms moving, to get blood moving through them. You can also roll your shoulders back and forward. A lot of people forget about the shoulders, but when we play guitar, our shoulders are moving into different positions, and you can get quite stiff if you're not nice and loosened off. The next thing to do would be to shake our wrists. Again, just to get the blood flowing through them, get used to moving through different ranges of motion in our wrists, and we can roll them around in circles as well, just to stretch off all the tendons and ligaments and muscles that control our hand. And we can also do the same thing with our fingers. We can wiggle our fingers to get them nice and warmed up, and we can stretch them in and out like this, just to make sure that we're nice and warm. We can even stretch our hands out like this, or if you feel like it, every individual finger as well, just to make sure that you're nice and loose. Even something as simple as rubbing your hands together can help to warm them up and get you ready to play. Just play around with all these movements, maybe make up some of your own, and try to build a little routine that works well for you. So most guitarists won't do a set routine before they play every time, but almost everybody will have a little bit of a shake off, will have a little bit of a loosen off, because it really does help. Now that we're nice and warmed up, let's get cracking on with the lesson. Hello and welcome to NL's online guitar lessons. This is lesson 2, and today we're going to be working on reading tablature. Now, just like when we learn anything, when we learn guitar, it can be really helpful to have someone show us exactly how and what to play, whether that's in person with a teacher, or whether it's online through a video just like this one. But there are lots of scenarios where it's more convenient, especially if you're a visual learner, it can be more convenient to read what you're supposed to play. And we have lots of different systems for this. In music, we call this notation. When we're writing, we're notating what we have to play on our instrument. And on guitar, there's a really useful and simplified form of notation called tablature. And that's what we're going to explore today. So, this is an example of a stave in tablature. This is like an empty page. You can see from this example that there are 6 lines, and each of these lines represents one guitar string. It's viewed from the perspective of the guitarist, which means that if you look down onto the fretboard, that is what tab looks like. It starts with the low E string at the bottom, and the high E string all the way up the top. You can see the note names for each string are written in this example at the beginning of the stave. Also really helpful in this example is that the low string is actually drawn thicker, and they get thinner as they go up, just like with a regular guitar from this perspective, which means that it's easy to keep track of where you are, and it might make it a little bit easier to read in the beginning. If I play an open string, I mentioned last lesson that we could call this the 0 fret because I'm not playing any fret. In tablature, that's notated with a 0 on the string that I'm playing. So this would be a 0 on the low E string. If I play a different fret, if I move my finger up to the 5th fret, then I would write a 5 on that same space. And this applies to all the strings. So if I play the 3rd fret on the B string, then I would write a 3 on the B string. If I play the 7th fret on the high E string, that would be a number 7 on the high E. In this next example, we've written out the main melody to Beethoven's Ode to Joy. Now, this is a simplified version of the melody, and it only uses 3 frets over 2 strings. So it's a really good place to start reading tab. It starts out with an open string. In fact, it has 2. Then we move to the 1st fret, the 3rd fret, and the 3rd fret again. The rest of it is really simple to figure out. If I just play through this whole example, it looks like this. Now, from a reading perspective, that should be really simple to understand. Like I said, it's only moving over 2 strings, and I only really need to use 2 of my fingers. I'm not even playing this middle fret. So when I play the 3rd fret, I'm always going to use my ring finger, for now at least. And when I play the 1st fret, I'm always going to play my index finger. In terms of the way that you hold your hand, you want to make sure that you're keeping your fingers nice and curled round. You don't want to play them flat like this. You want to use your thumb to press against the back of the neck of the guitar, and that's what creates that clamping pressure on the string. If I don't use my thumb, I'm relying on my arm to pull back, and that gets very exhausting very quickly. A couple common problems that you'll run into when you first start fretting notes are buzz and dead notes. So if I don't play the string hard enough, if I don't press down, then it won't sound. It will just dampen the vibration of the string. It's like I'm stopping it from vibrating. If you hear notes like this, then that usually means that you have to press down a little bit harder, and you'll get a nice sound. If you get buzz, then that usually means that you're not pressing in the right place on the fret. So usually it works to play right in the middle of the fret, or slightly closer up this way. If you play too far down that way, you'll usually get a kind of buzzy sound. So try and make sure that whenever you play a fret, you always play right in the middle or slightly towards the bridge. In the beginning, when you're first setting off, playing your right hand in time with your left hand is probably one of the hardest things to get right. It's often overlooked, but your right hand is just as important. If you're playing with a plectrum, try and hold it like this between your thumb and your index finger. You want to make sure that you've got a tight grip and not too much of it is sticking out, but you still have enough to play the string. There's a lot of subtleties with pick technique that we're not going to go into, but for the main part, you just want to make sure that you're not going to drop the plectrum and that you have control of it. If you're playing with your thumb or with your fingers, again, that's a whole world unto itself, but just try and focus on hitting the correct string at the correct time and getting used to playing each string as you mean to. So if I'm playing on the 1st string, I'm always going to pluck on the 1st string. If I'm playing on the 2nd string, make sure that I'm not hitting any other strings when I'm at it. So with that in mind, and now that you're able to read tab, pause the video and practice this tune. So have a go at playing Ode to Joy, see if you can figure out all the notes, see if you can get it smooth, and then play along with me. And if you can do that, well done. You're now well on your way to learning whatever you want. If you can understand tab, then you now have access to a huge library of songs and educational materials. This is kind of the common language of guitar as far as writing goes. So there are lots and lots of examples of websites and books and other resources where everything you could ever want to know is written down and accessible in the form of tab. Now that you can read it, it's all yours, so you can go out and get it. Well, thanks very much for tuning into today's lesson. I hope you enjoyed it and I hope that you learned an awful lot. Just as we finish our lesson today, we're going to round it off the same way as we started with some stretches and some cool down movements. This is again just to make sure that we stay nice and loose now that we're finished, that we don't cramp up or get sore, and that means that we can play even better tomorrow. Okay, so a lot of the same movements we did at the start, we can do now. We can roll our shoulders, we can shake off our arms, we can roll our wrists, and we can stretch off our fingers. Just like at the beginning, the key thing is to keep things moving, to keep things warm and stretched off. With all that done, all that's left is to say thank you very much for joining us today at NL Guitar Lessons Online. Please check out some of our other content and don't forget to like, share and subscribe.